The oral contraceptive pill for women has long been lauded as something that women can take to regulate their menstrual cycles. And even still today, it is readily prescribed by doctors and given out quite freely as something to help a woman regulate her cycles. If she's got, say, extreme pain during her cycle, or if she's got really heavy bleeding. And the truth is that the oral contraceptive pill traditionally was birth control, but in order to kind of make that socially acceptable, it was branded as something that regulates women's cycles. And there are some really amazing people doing phenomenal work, preaching this message and talking about it with passion and trying to educate women to think about what's going on in their body and perhaps why they started taking the oral contraceptive pill in the first place, and to just have some time to reevaluate or reassess if that's actually the right choice for them. And there are other choices if it is purely for contraception. We can talk a little bit more about that. If it's to regulate the cycle, the oral contraceptive pill is actually a little bit more like a mask. It's just putting a smoke screen in front of symptoms that are still there. It's not correcting anything. It's not healing anything necessarily. And in actual fact, what it's doing is shutting down the natural production of hormones that come from the ovaries. And by taking a synthetic hormone, it kind of puts that whole region of a woman's body into stasis, which might seem great. Initially, it might seem like, yep, I've got a lot of control now. I can decide if I want to have a bleed this month or if I don't. And all of a sudden, my menstrual cycle can be really, really predictable. But all too often, what happens when women want to come off the oral contraceptive pill, maybe it's because they are ready to start a family, or they've suddenly just come to a place where they want to get more in touch with their femininity and actually reconnect with their cycle. Depending on how long she's been on it, it can be very, very bumpy and very, very dramatic, especially if in the first place there were some really extreme signs and symptoms present in her cycle that have just been pushed down and have remained dormant. All of those things are going to get kicked up again. So quite possibly the reason that she went on the pill in the first place is simply going to come back roaring when she decides to transition off. And a lot of women don't quite understand what the pill does to the body. They just accept it as a prescribed medication from a trusted doctor, and then that's it. I'm going to put a link into this video of a really phenomenal podcast where the amazing Lara Bryden speaks about this. She's a quite extraordinary naturopath, and she has so much information. She's a brilliant educator, so there's definitely going to be that link in there if you want to listen to her and find out more. From a Chinese medicine perspective, it is quite difficult when women come in for gynecological issues, or even when you're trying to assess the state of her health in that department. If she's on the pill, like I said before, it's almost as if she's wearing a mask, because the bleed that she's having is a synthetic bleed. So it's not really going to tell me too much about the state of her blood, the way that her energy is moving, whether or not there's any kind of blood stagnation, whether there are certain emotional factors that are playing into her cycle. So it's a bit harder to actually get the clues that you need as a practitioner to help her get back to a state of balance. Not that that's a massive issue, but it's a fake bleed. It's not a real bleed, because the hormones that you take when you're on the oral contraceptive pill are not exactly the same as the ones that your body creates on its own. So why would that be a problem? Well, you need the hormones that your ovaries produce for more than just reproduction. Your estrogen, your estradiol, and the other kinds of female hormones do much more than just regulate your reproductive capacity. They are needed for so many things in the body. And this is what Lara talks about. Essentially, when you go off the pill, your body has to reach back to the age and the time when you started taking the pill and try and pick things up again. It's almost like the factory or the machinery has just been switched off and it's just been gathering dust slowly, possibly for 10 years, maybe longer. And then all of a sudden, it has to kickstart again and doesn't quite know how to function. And there can be all sorts of things that come up. Things like extreme acne, depression, anxiety, ferocious period pain, unpredictable emotions around that time, heavy bleeding. And that's not necessarily going to be a great experience for a woman who just wanted to get back in touch with herself. And then all of a sudden, it's just the oceanic, tumultuous ferocity of these dramas of coming off the pill. So Chinese medicine can be a really great system of support for somebody who wants to make that transition, especially if the reason that they went on it in the first place was because of really intense signs and symptoms. So acupuncture and herbs can be there to help lessen those signs and symptoms that are there, and to try and get the hormones regulated smoothly, to try and get the body back in harmony with its own production of hormones, so that we can get back to a state of balance. Because really, and lots of naturopaths talk about this, lots of gynecologists talk about this as well, your period, which is the days that you're bleeding, are basically your monthly report card. So that is going to tell you, or your healthcare practitioner, what's going on for the rest of your body. Has it been a really stressful month? Has there been, a few days in the month where you've really had blowouts and there's been a lot of alcohol or late nights or even like big emotional dips? All of those things are going to kind of show up in the next cycle. Was it early? Was it late? Is it irregular? And then all of these clues we look at and then try and get a sense of, okay, well, what in the rest of this woman's body is her cycle trying to tell me about? What is it trying to show me? And therefore, how can I use that as a great little set of informations that I can then help to regulate the whole body? So if you're watching this video and you're intrigued, and it's been something in the back of your mind for a while that you would like to get off the pill, but you're a bit nervous because the reason that you went on the pill in the first place was because your period was awful, then you might want to think about looking for a support team or a practitioner that you can consult with before you make that transition, just so that you've got that care and that sounding board for somebody to be with you as you make that transition in your body to make it smoother and less dramatic.